I worked night shifts at the hospital last month. I was 32 years old and it was tough, but I needed the job to support my family. The hospital was big. The lights were harsh, and the hallways echoed with silence. I was used to the smell of antiseptic in the empty hours. Still, sometimes I felt very alone. I never thought much about what happened until now. In the beginning, everything seemed normal. I did my rounds, checked on patients, and stocked supplies. It was my third night that things started to get strange. I noticed one patient's vital signs fluctuating unexpectedly. I rushed to her room. She looked scared. She whispered to me, saying there was a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. I told her it was probably the meds. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to panic her. As the week went on, things got even stranger. The woman kept insisting she saw the figure. I didn't know what to think. I wondered if it was the medication or if she truly believed it. Then, I began to hear whispers. At first it was soft, just my name floating in the dark. I couldn't tell where it came from. My heart raced as I looked around. Maybe I was imagining it because I was so tired. Every morning I found things out of place. Supplies were moved from room to room. It bugged me. I often asked myself, where did that medication go? I started to feel like I might be losing my mind. One night, I heard children's laughter coming from the pediatric ward. It chilled me to the bone. No kids were supposed to be there at that hour. I walked over. My heart pounded in my chest. The ward was empty. Just silence. I turned quickly. I questioned what had just happened. On the last night of my shift, everything felt heavy. The whispers returned, louder this time. They surrounded me. I felt colder, like someone was watching. Suddenly, I saw something move in my peripheral vision, just for a second. When I turned, there was nothing there. I hurried to check on the patient, hoping to make sense of things. I walked fast, fear gripping my chest. When I reached her room, she said again, "He's watching me." I asked who she meant, but she didn't answer. Then I heard it again, my name, echoing in my ears. Eli. I reached the door, and as I grabbed the handle, the lights flickered. I felt coldness sweep through me. Something brushed against my arm. I turned around. "Who is it?" My voice wobbled. I wasn't ready for the silence that followed. Nobody was there. I backed away, feeling a chill wrap around me like ice. I never went back to that hospital after my last shift. I still think about that night. The whispers, the figure, and the fear. Was it all in my head? Or was something really haunting those empty halls? I just don't know. I can't shake it. I tried to move on after the hospital, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't finished. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that patient's terrified face. I felt guilty for leaving without helping her. But part of me was scared of what awaited me if I ever returned. A week later, I bumped into a fellow nurse named Clara at the grocery store. We used to work together, and she knew I had taken a break. When she asked how I was adjusting, I hesitated. I told her about my experiences, expecting her to laugh them off. Instead, she leaned in close, her expression serious. "You're not the first to feel that way," she said quietly. "We've had strange things happen in that hospital for years. They say the old building is haunted." My skin prickled. "Haunted? You're joking." "Not at all. You should talk to Martin. He's seen things too. Shadows that move, voices, and the children's laughter. You're not imagining it." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "Patients claim they see children in the hallways. It's always the same few faces. Unfortunately, those kids never left. They died there a long time ago." I didn't want to believe her, but her acknowledgement of my experiences made them feel more real. My mind raced. Was the woman's fear tied to something more? I resolved then to ask Martin about this. I needed to know. The next evening, I drove to the hospital. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity pushed me through the front doors. The air felt heavy and stale, as if the building were holding its breath. I found Martin in the break room. He had salt and pepper hair and weary eyes. He looked like someone who had seen too much. I sat across from him and told him everything that happened on my last shift. He listened quietly. When I finished, He took a breath and nodded. I had a similar experience, but it was worse. He closed his eyes for a moment. There was a storm one night. I was finishing my rounds when I heard a voice. It called to me from the pediatric ward. I didn't have the courage to go in. But there were whispers, Eli. Lots of them. My heart raced. What happened next? I got a phone call from the front desk saying a child was missing. The ward was locked. No way for anyone to get out. When we found her, she was in the hallway. She looked terrified and just pointed down the hall. What was down the hall? I asked, my stomach tightening. I don't know. No one wanted to find out. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the pediatric ward. My body tensed. Martin exchanged worried glances with me. Then everything went dark. I blinked, disoriented. The sudden darkness felt like a lead weight, pressing in on me. I could hear Martin breathing, his sharp intake of air breaking the silence. My heart raced as a sliver of instinct tugged at me to grab my phone. Finally, I managed to pull it out of my pocket. As the screen lit up, it cast a faint glow around us. Martin's face was pale, the worry in his eyes deepening. What just happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. It's never gone dark like this before, he replied, glancing toward the hallway. The crash echoed again, louder this time. It came from the pediatric ward, ricocheting in the stillness. Should we check it out? I asked, though a part of me wanted to run. Every bone in my body tells me no, he admitted. Still, he hesitated, then stood up. Let's at least see what it was. We crept across the break room, moving toward the door. With each step, a chill snaked up my spine. It felt like something was waiting just out of sight. The hospital hallways loomed before us, shadows flickering as the emergency lights kicked on, dimly illuminating the space. As we reached the pediatric ward, I pushed the door open. It squeaked loudly, a sound that seemed to shatter the silence. The room was empty, but toys were scattered everywhere. I knelt down, picking up a stuffed bear. Its button eyes stared back at me, innocent yet unsettling. Martin stepped inside behind me. The crash had to come from here. Just then, I heard the laughter. Soft, childlike giggles echoed through the hall. My stomach churned. The sound was chilling. Absolutely not what you expected to hear in an empty hospital ward. Did you hear that? I asked, glancing at Martin. He nodded, eyes darting around nervously. It's the kids, he whispered. It has to be. Before I could respond, a small figure dashed past us. I whirled around, heart racing. What was that? I half shouted. Martin's face paled further. I don't know. We should get out of here. But something held me back. A ghostly curiosity. I had to know. I took a cautious step down the hall, following the sound. It grew louder, taunting me, beckoning me toward a dimly lit corner. I rounded the corner and saw her. A little girl, no more than 5, with tangled hair and a white dress that seemed unnaturally bright against the fading walls. Her eyes were fixed on me, wide, fearful, pleading. Help me, she whispered, pointing towards a door at the end of the hall, the door that every nurse avoided. The chill deepened in my bones. What do you mean? I asked, almost afraid to breathe. Please, she cried, and as if on cue, the laughter faded into silence. I opened my mouth to call for Martin, but when I turned, he was gone. The hallway dimmed, shadows creeping closer. My heart raced as the door at the end of the hall creaked open, revealing darkness. Strange, flickering lights appeared within, casting long shadows. I was torn. I needed to find Martin, yet something called out to me from that door. That was when I saw it. A flash of movement, something dark beneath the flickering lights. And then, I heard the whispers, not just from the girl, but a chorus of voices, echoing behind me. You shouldn't have come here. Panic surged. I spun to find the exit, but it felt like the walls were shifting, closing in on me. I had to leave. There had to be a way out. But as I turned back towards the door, a cold wind rushed through the hall, and I understood one thing for sure. I was not alone. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to run, but the little girl's gaze anchored me in place. She looked terrified, almost as if she were trying to escape something unseen. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the darkness creeping in. Where's Martin? I thought, scanning the hallway for any sign of him. Nothing. Panic tightened my throat. I had no choice but to focus on the girl. Why do you need help? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She pointed again, her little finger trembling. In there, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The door at the end of the hall loomed like a gaping mouth, ready to swallow me whole. 1,000 questions flooded my mind, but before I could ask anything else, a loud banging echoed from within. It sounded almost frantic. I stepped forward involuntarily, compelled by a mix of fear and bravery. Just as my hand brushed the cold doorknob, I heard Martin's voice. Hey, where are you? It was distant, echoing down the corridor. Relief washed over me, but it mixed with urgency. I needed to find him. Martin, I shouted, trying to keep my tone calm as I glanced back at the girl. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were locked on me, filled with a mix of hope and fear. You shouldn't be here, she cried, her voice breaking. You have to get out. Before I could react, the door swung open on its own. A blinding light illuminated the dark hallway, causing me to shield my eyes. I took a step back, heart pounding in my ears. The air felt electric, charged with something I couldn't name. Then, a tall, shadowy figure emerged from the room, tall and menacing. It shifted from side to side, as if testing the space, before locking its gaze onto the girl. Get away from her, I shouted, but my voice felt weak against the presence looming before me. The girl gasped, her expression turning from fear to sheer terror. Run, she cried. Without thinking, I turned and bolted down the hallway, desperate to find Martin. The laughter from before returned, echoing behind me, cold and mocking. I sprinted, my shoes slapping against the polished floor, the lights overhead flickering sporadically. Where the hell are you? I breathed, cutting around corners, glancing back. Everything felt surreal, a nightmarish game where the stakes were life and death. Help! A cry echoed through the hospital somewhere very close. My heart raced at the sound, recognizing it as Martin's voice. I sped toward it, rounding another corner just as the lights went out again, plunging me into darkness. Martin, I shouted, fear creeping back into my gut, turning it in knots. I fumbled through the shadows, the air heavy with an oppressive silence. Just as I thought I'd lost hope, a slender beam of light shot from my phone in my pocket, its glow cutting through the blackness. The light illuminated a shape on the floor ahead, a figure sprawled out. My heart lurched. Martin! I rushed to him, relief washing over me as I knelt by his side. But as I reached out to shake him awake, I froze. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly ahead, but he didn't respond. A new chill settled in my bones as I finally noticed the girl's voice whispering just behind me, You shouldn't have come back. I turned slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me not to look back. But I had to know. The girl stood there, her pale face illuminated by the weak light of my phone, her eyes wide and glimmering with fear. I told you to get out, she repeated, her voice trembling. It's not safe. Martin lay lifeless at my feet, and I fought the rising panic in my chest. I needed to figure out what to do. What happened to him? Why isn't he moving? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't listen, she said, taking a step toward me. You shouldn't have either. You have to go, now. As if on cue, the lights flickered back on with a flickering hum, flooding the hallway with harsh fluorescent light. In that moment, I saw movement behind the girl. The shadowy figure from earlier loomed just beyond her, its dark shape backlit by the light. I instinctively moved back, my heart pounding loud enough to drown out everything else. Martin! I shouted again, desperation pouring through me. I shook him lightly, hoping he'd wake up. There was no response. The laughter from before echoed down the corridor again, sending a wave of cold dread crashing over me. Please, he needs help. I turned to the girl, pleading. What do I do? She shook her head sadly. You can't help him. It's too late. You have to leave before it gets you too. A chill ran through me. Before what gets me. I could feel the air shift, something thickening around us, pressing against my skin. The figure stepped closer, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "Run!" shouted the girl, her warning a frantic hush. In a split second, I made a decision. I grabbed Martin and fought against the panic threatening to drown me. With one last look at the girl, I turned and bolted down the hallway, dragging Martin's unconscious body with me. The laughter stirred around us, rising and falling like a haunting melody. I hit another corner, nearly losing my footing as I stumbled forward. The walls seemed to close in as I raced toward the nearest exit, desperately searching for the way out. "Someone help us!" I yelled, hoping someone would hear me. Just ahead, another figure blocked the path, but this one was different. A doctor dressed in scrubs, his face hidden beneath a surgical mask. "You shouldn't be here," he boomed, sounding almost like the girl. "Please, I need—" "Go!" he shouted, raising a hand as if to stop me, but the urgency in his voice triggered something primal. I pushed past him without thinking, driven by survival. The hallway twisted and turned like a maze, each step weighted with dread. Martin's body felt heavier, as though something was pulling him back. I reached the exit door, but it was shut tight, the metal handle icy against my palm. Behind me, the shadows stirred again, laughter echoing. It was becoming a cacophony, a haunting symphony meant to drown me. I threw my weight against the door one more time, panic scrambling my thoughts. Then everything went dark again. The lights flickered and dimmed, leaving me in pitch blackness as whispers filled the air, wrapping around me like a shroud. "Help!" I shouted again, but the sound felt swallowed by the void. I felt trapped, the air thickening as dread coiled tightly around my chest. That's when I saw it. A glimmer of light at the far end of the hallway, pulsing gently like a beacon. I hesitated for only a second. I couldn't let Martin be lost forever. With every ounce of strength, I pushed forth into the shadows, toward the fading glimmer. The air was icy as I moved toward the light, my instincts screaming for me to turn back. But I had no choice. Martin was still unconscious, and terror curled in my stomach as I imagined what was happening to him. The faint light was all I had, and I focused on it with a fervor, willing it to guide me to safety. I stumbled forward, my feet slipping slightly on something wet. I glanced down, but the dimness obscured the floor. Ignoring it, I pressed on, gripping Martin's arm tightly. As I got closer, the light pulsed brighter, illuminating a small room off the hallway. With a sudden burst of resolve, I pushed through the door and entered. It was a stark room filled with medical equipment and sterile surfaces, but it was empty. I dropped Martin onto an adjacent bed, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned back, ready to shut the door against whatever was hunting us. Then I froze. The light in the room flickered, and shadows danced on the walls like they were alive. Panic bubbled to the surface. I needed to find help, or at least understand what was happening. I scanned the area and saw a small cabinet in the corner with a first aid kit. A surge of hope filled me. At least I could check on Martin's condition. I stepped forward and yanked the kit open. Bandages, antiseptic, and syringes cluttered the space. Just as I grabbed a roll of bandages, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, jolting me. I turned, fear clawing at my gut. Then I heard it. Soft, low whispers mingled with that sinister laughter. It wasn't quite random. It felt almost like a call, beckoning me. My mind raced, and a feeling of dread swept over me. "Get it together," I whispered to myself. But my heart was racing, and I could hear its thumping echoing in my ears. I moved back toward the door, reluctantly letting the first aid kit fall shut behind me. I had to know what was happening out there. I peered into the dim hallway, and noticed the shadows shifting. They were closer now, creeping along the walls like spider legs. From the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker, a silhouette darting past the doorframe. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence was the only response. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Help us," they beckoned, wrapping around me like vines. I felt an icy dread wash over me again. Desperate to break free from that paralyzing fear, I turned back to Martin. He had to wake up. I shook him gently, saying his name in a frantic whisper. "Martin, please, wake up." His body remained still, cold against my touch. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Just then, something behind me moved, and I whirled around to face the shadows coalescing. The doctor in scrubs I had seen before emerged from the darkness, his expression unreadable. "No," I yelled, my heart racing. "You can't be here. What's happening?" But instead of answering, he stepped closer, and I felt the air shift, thick with tension. My mind raced. Was he a part of this nightmare? I tried to back away, but he was already blocking my path. A strange sense of calm washed over me as the whispers grew raging, drowning out everything else. "Come with me," he said, voice low yet firm. "Why?" I found myself asking, though my instincts screamed at me to flee. Before he could respond, the room plunged into darkness, the light snuffed out like a candle. I could hear the laughter again, now echoing around me like a malicious chorus. I couldn't breathe. I felt around, trying to find Martin, trying to anchor myself to reality. And then, the darkness cracked, and I caught another glimpse of the pulsing light I had seen earlier. It was still there, beckoning me, promising hope amid despair. I had to make a choice. I hesitated, my heart racing. The light in the distance felt like a lifeline, and my instincts pushed me forward. Ignoring the whispers, I took a step. Then another. This was my chance. The doctor's figure loomed behind me, but I didn't look back. I had to reach the light. It pulsated like a heartbeat, and as I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a light. It was a door. An old, wooden door with faded gold lettering that read, "Emergency Exit." My fingers brushed against the door handle, warm against the chill surrounding me. It rattled slightly, a reminder that it didn't just lead to the hallway, it promised escape. I turned the handle and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. Panic fluttered in my chest. I rattled it again, desperation creeping into my veins. The laughter echoed behind me and I could almost feel the shadows closing in. "Martin!" I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. "Please wake up!" I pressed my back against the door as if it could shield me from whatever lurked in the corners. And then, I heard it. His name whispered softly through the shadows. "Martin." It was a familiar voice, yet distorted, like a recording played backwards. A jolt ran through me. "That's not right," I murmured, fear flooding my veins. Suddenly Martin stirred on the bed. His eyes flickered open briefly, but they held a foggy confusion. "Where?" he managed to croak before closing them again. I felt relief wash over me just as the shadows shifted, closer now, their whispers morphing into a cacophony. "Help us!" they begged eagerly, filling the space with urgency. "Help us! Help us!" I had to get Martin out of here. In that moment, I felt a surge of determination. I turned to him, shaking his arm again. "Martin, please, we need to leave." I glanced back at the door, praying it would open. Then, without warning, the door groaned and creaked. A sliver of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the chaos behind me. The doctor's figure had vanished, but the shadows swirled around, restless and hungry. "You have to come," they urged. In one fluid motion, I yanked the door open, its hinges squealing in protest. I pulled Martin up from the bed, wrapping an arm around his waist as we stumbled into the bright light beyond the door. My heart raced as hope ignited within me, but the air was thick with something malicious like a storm about to break. As we emerged into a long corridor bathed in bright fluorescent light, I saw it. Someone was standing at the end. A woman in a white coat, her back facing us. I squinted, but dread filled me. Was she friend or foe? "Martin," I called again, nudging him slightly. He didn't respond. His weight pressed heavily against me, and I glanced back at the door as the voices wailed from within. The shadows clawed at the edges of the doorway, as if they were trying to push through. "Come back!" they hissed, echoing with desperation. I felt the pull of the darkness behind me, and I instinctually stepped back, shielding Martin. But the woman turned, and my stomach dropped as I recognized her. It was Dr. Hayes, someone I knew all too well. "Come with me," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "Why?" I asked, backing away, unsure of what to believe anymore. Her eyes registered something, fear maybe, and for a split second, I saw her hesitate. And in that moment of uncertainty, I heard the familiar whispers behind me once more, growing louder, more urgent, clawing at the edges of my mind. I had to decide. Would I trust Dr. Hayes, or was this just another trap? I didn't have long to think. The shadows were pressing in, their whispers becoming a frightening chorus that surrounded me. I looked back at Dr. Hayes. Her expression was a mix of concern and urgency, but it didn't ease my fear. I needed to buy time. "Where are you taking us?" I demanded, holding Martin tighter against me. "Somewhere safe. You need to trust me." She motioned toward the corridor behind her. "Please, we don't have much time." Before I could respond, the whispers erupted into a dissonant roar. "Help us! Help us!" My heart raced as I felt the cold tendrils of darkness creep closer. Panic gripped me. I had no clue what would happen if I rejected Dr. Hayes right now, but the voices were relentless. I could feel their desperation, their pain. "Martin!" I called again, shaking him harder. "Wake up!" He stirred but didn't fully regain consciousness. I was losing him to this nightmarish place. "Now!" Dr. Hayes ordered. "We need to move before they claim you both." With a shaky breath, I finally stepped forward. We moved toward her, glancing one last time at the door we'd just fled. The shadows writhed, their grasp escaping us for now. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, a stark contrast to the darkness that lingered behind me. As we walked, the corridor seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls were sterile and white, but an odd chill hung in the air. I felt something shift, like the ground was trembling beneath us, a subtle vibration that unsettled me. "Where are we?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though doubt clawed at my insides. "We're in a part of the hospital that's been abandoned," Dr. Hayes explained. "There are places here that the staff tends to avoid. Trust me, it's safer." Her words felt hollow. Nothing about this night had felt safe. Martin's breathing was shallow, and I was terrified of losing him. I turned to see how he was doing, but he was worse off. His skin was pale, his lips slightly parted. I could sense that something was very wrong. Then suddenly, the floor beneath us shook harder, rattling the lights. I stumbled, gripping Martin tighter to keep him from falling. Dr. Hayes steadied herself against a wall, glancing back toward the way we came. "It's starting," she muttered, her eyes widening with concern. "Starting? What do you mean?" I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper. There was no time to argue. Without warning, something crashed from down the corridor, a loud bang reverberating through the hallway. My heart dropped. Dr. Hayes whipped around, her face a mix of fear and urgency. "There are things here, entities that feed on chaos," she said, urgency layering her once calm demeanor. "We must move quickly. Follow me." Then, everything rippled. The corridor flickered like a faulty light bulb, shadows darting across the walls. A dark shape darted from behind a corner, something I couldn't quite see. That's when I realized we were not alone. "Run!" Dr. Hayes shouted, and without hesitating I took off, dragging Martin along, heart pounding as we fled into the unknown. The shadows were close behind us now, their cold breath brushing over my shoulder. Something was lurking in the dark, and it was coming for us. I sprinted down the corridor, my feet slamming against the hard floor as Dr. Hayes led the way. I glanced over my shoulder, heart racing as the shadows writhed and twisted, almost alive. There was an eerie sense of purpose in their movement, and dread settled like a stone in my stomach. "Keep going," Dr. Hayes urged. "We need to reach the stairwell." The fluorescent lights buzzed, flickering with an unsettling rhythm that matched my quickening pulse. Martin's weight felt heavier in my arms. I couldn't afford to stumble. I couldn't let the darkness take him. "Where is the stairwell?" I shouted, desperation slipping into my voice. "Just ahead. It's our only way out." Suddenly, chaos erupted behind us. A guttural roar filled the air, rattling my bones. I stumbled but kept moving, pushing through the fear. I could hear scratching, shuffling, hungry, searching. It was as if the shadows wanted to devour us, to trap us in a realm of despair. As we turned a corner, Dr. Hayes skidded to a halt. "This way." She pointed at a door marked with ominous red paint, its surface peeling. In here! I didn't need to think twice. I hurled myself and Martin through the door. The moment we crossed the threshold, the roar faded to a low growl, but the feeling of being hunted was still thick in the air. I pressed my back against the cool wall, panting as Dr. Hayes closed the door behind us. Is it safe? I gasped, urgency painted across my features. Dr. Hayes shook her head slightly, her eyes focused and calculating. For now. But we need to figure out our next move. These entities won't stop. They're drawn to your energy, your fear. What do you mean? I felt a shiver run through me, but I pushed aside the fear. I needed to know. Why us? She hesitated, glancing at the darkened room before responding. Because of what happened here. This hospital. It's a nexus. It draws troubled souls, and in moments of fear, they manifest. They can sense vulnerability. I looked around, the shadows creeping at the edges of the dim room. An old storage area filled with dusty equipment and boxes, long forgotten. It felt claustrophobic. Martin, I murmured, looking down at him. His skin was ashen, and his breaths were irregular. I shook him gently. Wake up, please. Dr. Hayes came closer, kneeling beside us. We need to stabilize him. He's stuck between states, caught in the wake of the chaos outside. What do we do? My voice trembled, uncertainty clawing at me. Dr. Hayes reached into her bag and pulled out a small, shining vial. This will help. It's a calming elixir. It should keep the shadows at bay and ease his distress. I took the vial from her and hesitated. But what if it doesn't work? What if... Trust me, she insisted, her eyes fierce. We need to act fast. I nodded, steeling myself. With trembling hands, I opened the vial and poured a few drops into Martin's mouth. I held my breath, watching for any sign of change. As I waited, the door rattled violently, threatening to burst open. The shadows pushed against it, angry and relentless. Then everything went dark. No, I shrieked, panic rising in my chest. I fumbled for the door, but it was far too solid. What now? I cried, the weight of my fear crashing down on me. I clutched Martin, praying that he would wake up before it was too late. But then came a flicker of light, shimmering in the far corner of the room, and I knew it was something far worse than the darkness. The shimmering grew closer, almost hypnotic, swirling with a spectrum of colors that danced and flared like a firework. I could feel the pull of its brightness, juxtaposed against the oppressive shadows banging against the door. It was mesmerizing, yet terrifying, and my instincts fought with the desire to succumb to its allure. Stay with me, Martin, I murmured, cradling his head in my lap as the vibrant glow enveloped us. The pounding against the door intensified, like a heart racing in rhythm with my own. The air crackled with energy as the vibrant light flickered in time with Martin's shallow breaths. Dr. Hayes pushed against the door, her face taut with effort. Keep him focused. Talk to him. Don't let him slip away, she urged, her voice urgent amidst the chaos. Martin, come on, I encouraged, desperation creeping into my words. You need to wake up. We need you. But the swirling light hummed louder now, beckoning me as if it had its own pulse, a pulse I felt in my bones. Shadows coiled at the edges, writhing and clawing, a tangible darkness yearning to consume the light. I glanced back at the door, just as a burst of iridescence flared, illuminating the room like midday. Then silence. An eerie hush fell over the area as the shadows withdrew slightly, as if stung by the brilliance. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me. I could sense a shift, could feel something clamoring for power beyond the door, something desperate to enter. Stay back, I shouted into the abyss. You can't take him. My voice tore through the silence, momentarily grounding me, emboldening that flicker of hope. Martin, you need to fight, I pleaded, squeezing his hand. Remember what we talked about? You said you'd always protect me. The brilliance waned momentarily, and just as my heart sank, a flicker ignited within Martin's closed eyes. A gasp escaped his lips, and I felt his body tense beneath my hand. Eli, he whispered, his voice like a fragile thread weaving through the stillness. Yes, I'm right here, I cried, a wave of relief washing over me. The brilliance swelled again, radiating through the room, piercing the thick veil of shadows. Martin's brow furrowed, and I could see clarity begin to return to his expression. What happened? Dr. Hayes glanced between us, the frantic urgency beginning to fade into a cautious optimism. You're safe now, but we need to act quickly. It won't hold for long. Hold? What hold? Martin asked, confusion clouding his eyes like a storm, even as awareness seeped back in. The light is creating a barrier, Dr. Hayes explained, her voice steadying. But it'll only last as long as we can keep the shadows at bay. We need to get out of here. I nodded, squeezing Martin's hand, pulling him upright as he blinked against the dim surroundings. We can do this. We're together, and we're getting out of this nightmare. He took a deep breath, visibly steeling himself. Let's move then. Dr. Hayes nodded, her demeanor shifting from frantic to resolute. Follow my lead. As Martin and I staggered to our feet, the door rattled again with renewed vigor. Keep it together, I murmured. Just keep pushing. We moved toward the door, maneuvering around boxes and equipment, our breath hitching as the swirling glow flickered, threatening to dissolve. On 3, Dr. Hayes instructed. 1, 2, 3. We shoved against the door with all our strength, the brilliant light surrounding us as we exerted our will against the encroaching shadows. The door groaned under our assault, hesitating before it finally broke free. As we tumbled out into the corridor, the shadows recoiled slightly, but the whispers roared back in manic desperation. "Help us!" they cried, their voices crashing together, a maelstrom of tortured souls. "Run!" Dr. Hayes shouted, and we sprinted down the hallway, the glow still wrapping around us but fraying at the edges. I felt the tendrils of darkness clawing at my heels, their cries echoing behind us, becoming a cacophony that threatened to pierce the barrier. I glanced back as the shadows lunged forward, almost corporeal, but the brilliance held, if only for a moment longer. "Keep moving," Martin urged as we darted around a corner, the fluorescent overhead light sparking and flickering while the shadows pulsed with outrage. But then, just as hope surged, we reached a moment of quiet, a fork in the path. "Which way?" I asked, panic creeping back in. "Left," Dr. Hayes decided. "The emergency stairwell is just around the corner." "Let's go," Martin pushed, and we darted into that passageway, the sheltered chaos a whisper away from us. We clattered down the stairs, 3 steps at a time, fighting against the swell of darkness behind us. The whispers faded like echoes in the distance, but with it came an unsettling silence, pressing in around us. Finally, we reached the door leading to the outside, a heavy metal barrier, cold to the touch. I gasped, adrenaline surging as I pulled at the handle. "Is it locked?" Martin shouted, but I didn't have time to respond. I raked my fingers across the latch, my heart pounding. With one last tug, it clicked open and flung wide. Light flooded in from outside, searing against my eyes as we staggered out into the night. The chill air hit my skin like a balm, clarity rushing back. We stumbled out into the open air, the darkness behind us momentarily held at bay. But as I turned back to look at the hospital, I felt that familiar chill dart up my spine. The shadows loomed just within the doorframe, undulating like smoke, still watching us. "What just happened?" I breathed, unsure if I was ready for answers. Martin swallowed hard, his eyes reflecting fear and confusion. "I don't know. I just don't know." Dr. Hayes stood alongside us, her gaze locked on the doorway. "This isn't over," she murmured. "They'll always be drawn to this place, haunting it, waiting for moments of fear." "Why?" I asked helplessly. "Why us?" Dr. Hayes was silent, her expression unreadable as she considered her words, uncertainty flashing across her face. Then in the distance, the faintest echo of childlike laughter spilled into the night, rich and haunting, and the questions remained. I still wondered what I had escaped, what lingered in those cursed halls. What kind of darkness did I just flee from? But the answers for now would have to wait, shrouded in the shadows as we walked away, forever changed by the events that unfolded. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if that old hospital still stands, if the whispers still echo through its empty halls. But mostly, I try not to think about it.